My name is Nurik. I am a member, and kind of a newly minted member of the Geo APIs team. I work on the Earth API and the KML spec. I do developer support, so third-party developers that have questions about the Earth API and KML, they post in a public group, which I'll provide you a link to, and I respond with answers and things like that. So, just to start off, how many of you have actually heard of the Earth API? I'm assuming everybody has, right? Okay, so right now, maybe you've coded before with the Earth API, maybe not. Right now we're actually going to get into the code, not immediately, but we'll get into the code and see what it looks like. Alright, so how do we get here? So in Google I/O, May 2008, Michael T. Jones announces the Earth API. He kind of just showed it off, opened up a browser window, popped up Earth, and there were oohs and ahs around the audience, and it was kind of a big step for Earth in general, and you know, it was a very, very big moment for us. Paul Rademacher, I think either that day or the next day, showed off some demos, and he showed off kind of some of the capabilities that the Earth API has and the Earth browser plugin has. So those videos are actually available on YouTube right now. So anyway, so after Google I/O, there hasn't really been much public kind of many public announcements about it. So in June through August, we've been releasing new demos, and we actually revamped our API reference, and we've provided some new documentation. So people that haven't been able to use the API because they're not sure how to use it and such, they've been getting more and more resources recently in the past 3 months. So today, September, we're going to start writing some code and see what it looks like, and we'll show off some more demos, and hopefully this can be kind of another step forward in the Earth API, you know, in the life of the Earth API. Alright, so some current capabilities before we get to the code. Right now, the browser plugin and API are Windows only, Firefox 2 and higher, and IE6 and higher. So some of the things that you can do with the Earth API, you can programmatically manipulate and create place marks, which are kind of the equivalent of markers in the Maps API. You can create paths, which are like polylines. You can create polygons, ground overlays, screen overlays, and 3D models, which are probably one of the more exciting features. You can even show KML files just as you normally would in Google Earth, and you can actually manipulate the KML files once you put them into the Earth browser plugin. So some other features, you can let the users interact with the things you create on the plugin. You can actually listen to mouse events, so when a user clicks on a place mark, for example, you can give them some sort of feedback. You can do whatever you need in JavaScript. You can also show balloons, which are the equivalent of info windows in the Maps API, using the native browser HTML DOM. So you can actually embed whatever HTML your browser can render inside of the Earth plugin. And another nice feature for, I mean, there's no astronomers in the audience, or maybe there are, I don't know, but you can actually show the sky, which is kind of like you can see the stars, the nebulas, the whatever imagery we have, it's available there. So a quick overview of kind of the systems overview of what the Earth API and browser plugin are. So Earth API is very simply Google Earth in your browser. It's the entire Google Earth package, just kind of trimmed down, sliced apart, and stuffed into your browser window. The way it works is that there's actually two components. There's the Earth JavaScript API, which is kind of the intermediary between your application and Google Earth itself. Then there's the Earth browser plugin, which is just like I said, an extension of the Earth desktop application, so it uses the same rendering and whatnot. And then there's your own website, your own client-side JavaScript. So your client-side JavaScript talks to the JavaScript API, which then passes whatever you need along to the browser plugin and back, in the case of, for example, events. So a little more details about the JavaScript API. So there's kind of two pieces. There's the global namespace, google.earth.whatever. Those are just very basic JavaScript functions that give you kind of a top-level set of features to interact with the plugin. You can tell if it's supported, if it's installed. You can create an instance. You can use this to fetch KML, to load KML into your plugin, and you can add event listeners like for mouse and things like that. There's also the second part are the classes, and I'll actually just quickly show you a list of the classes. So the classes, there's two types. There's the GE whatever classes, and then there's the KML etc. etc. classes. The GE classes are plugin specific, so these they would not necessarily make sense in like maps, for example, and they wouldn't make sense in Earth application. The KML classes are actually just an exact replica of KML elements. So if there's a ground overlay element in KML, there's probably a KML ground overlay class in the Earth API, as you can see. So these are designed to kind of mirror the exact functionality of KML, which, as you may or may not know, is kind of the language of Google Earth. Alright, so let's move on. Now the JavaScript API was designed to very heavily mimic the kind of the W3C DOM. And the W3C DOM is like if you've done any sort of JavaScript coding in HTML or whatever, you kind of familiar with things like append child, remove child, child nodes, things like that. So the Earth API is kind of a KML DOM, and it's designed to mimic like those features that most developers are familiar with already. So alright, so now we're going to get started with coding. I see that some of you have Macs, so kind of unfortunate right now since it's Windows only, but you can follow along on my screen as we start coding. So the very first thing you need to do in any, to do a very, very basic Earth API page, you just need to create a basic HTML page with a fixed size div, and that div will be replaced by the plugin. And let's save that as earth.html. So I'm going to go ahead and start typing away. So let's see, HTML head, let's see, what do we say to do? Sorry. Write a basic HTML page with a div. Alright. Head, we'll leave that open for now. Body, div ID equals map3d. That's kind of a convention, but you can name it whatever you want. Style, width, let's make our, let's say 640 pixels by 480 pixels. So this div will be replaced by the Earth plugin. Okay, so let's save that, see what it looks like in Firefox. Absolutely nothing, as expected. Alright, now, let's see, add the standard Google JS API loader. Now, if you guys are familiar with the Maps API or any other Ajax APIs, there's a standard loader that you can use to load whatever you need. There's actually now functionality to load things like jQuery and things like that, but those are kind of unrelated. And there's a standard syntax for that. So what we're going to do is we're first going to load the JS API loader, and then we'll load the Earth API. So let's go back to our head. Script type equals text app, text JavaScript. Source equals com/JS API. Okay, so usually you'd actually append an API key to this, but since we're working on our local file system, we don't need to. So we'll do that, and then what's the next thing it says? To load the google.load earth1. So now we'll add more JavaScript. This time it'll be inline. That script. We'll do google.load earth1. And now, so that's going to load Earth, and it's going to load version 1. Right now, our version is stuck at 1. There's no kind of minor versions. I think in the future we do plan to have minor versioning and things like that. But for now, it's just google.load earth1. So let's save that. And again, you're not going to see anything yet because it's just loaded the JavaScript. It hasn't really done anything yet. So we'll just leave it alone for now. So now, this is what the code should look like. And you just saw it, so we'll just skip over this. So now we need to create an init function for body onload. Very simple. Onload equals init. And I'm sure a lot of you are getting very bored with this since it's very basic, but I just want to show off how really, really basic the code is for just getting a very simple Earth API mashup up and running. On init call Google.earth create instance. So this is one of those kind of global level functions that are exposed, like is supported, is installed, and things like that. So actually, right here, if you want to just check if the browser supports if the Earth plugin is supported by the browser, you can do google.earth.is supported, and just do your code, some logic there. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to do create instance. So now we're going to pass in the ID of the div we want to replace with the Earth plugin. Then we'll pass in something called init callback, and that's just the function we're going to write. You can name that whatever you want. And then null. That null is just a placeholder for a failure callback. In case there was some error, that function would be called, but since we don't really care right now, we'll just leave it blank. And finally, create an init callback function that calls ge get window set visibility true. So, init callback. Oh, actually, one thing to note is that your init callback is actually going to get an argument for an instance of the GE plugin class. The GE plugin class, it's in our API reference. That's kind of like the root of everything. Everything you do in the Earth API is going to kind of start with the GE plugin class. So GE plugin that get window dot set visibility true. So what that's going to do is just going to kind of show the Earth its very most primitive form. And yeah, so let's see. There we go. So it's going to show the universal little loading icon. And eventually it'll load up. And again, that eventually, we're hoping to minimize that eventually as much as possible, of course.
Quick question.
Yeah.
How big is the plugin?
How big in terms of memory or
Just file size, what's coming down?
file size? It's pretty much all of Google Earth. They're trying to trim it down as much as possible, but it's mostly just Google Earth stripped down by maybe a few megabytes. And it's just packaged in there. If you actually look in program files, you'll probably see very similar file structure. Yeah, it's pretty big. I mean, it's a work in progress. So I mean, I'm sure that they're gonna kind of cut down as much as possible to save in both memory and file system usage, hard disk space. But I mean, as of now, it's what it is. So it's pretty much just Earth. So there we go. So we have a very basic mashup. Actually, it's not even a mashup. Doesn't even do anything. But there it is. Earth in how many lines of code? 23 lines of code with spaces and such. So as you can see, it's very, very simple to just get the most basic features running. Alright. Chrome, actually, it's coming. It's one of our top priorities just to get Chrome support out. We'll talk a little bit about that after in the Q&A session. So Earth.html. So these are the things that we just added. You get it. Actually, this code is wrong. It should be GE or G plugins variables. It should be the same. Anyway, so it's very simple. You just add those lines and boom, you get Earth. And we're done. So fire up Earth.html, works in Firefox and IE, etc., etc. Now, if you actually write this code on a machine that doesn't have Earth installed, it'll still work. It'll just say you need to install Earth. I don't have a demo of what that looks like right now, but it's pretty much just some HTML with a button that says install Earth. Okay, so we've written some code. Let's do a little interlude and look at some demos, because demos really kind of get people excited. Exactly, there you go. And that should say it doesn't support your browser, right? Or only Windows. Ah, gotcha. Okay, so let's see. Monster Milk Truck. How many of you have seen Monster Milk Truck? So only a few people have seen Monster Milk Truck. This is by far my favorite sample ever in the world. For all plugins, my favorite thing in the world. So this kind of shows off. First of all, it shows off 3D buildings, which you can enable. Or there they are. You can show off 3D buildings. You can show 3D buildings, and that's a one line of code. Like you just enable that layer. Another thing this is showing off is events. Actually, these aren't exactly Google Earth events. These are just DOM events. Right now, my focus is in the web browser. So the web browser is catching my keyboard events, and it's passing them along to some JavaScript that's moving around this 3D model. So this 3D model is loaded actually from 3D Warehouse, and as you can see, it's pretty sweet and it's pretty fast. So, by the way, this is also showing off info balloons and ground overlays. The shadow is a ground overlay. So this isn't a new sample. This was discussed and this was showed off by Paul Rademacher in Google I/O 2008. So that's kind of Monster Milk Truck, one of my favorite samples. So now let's go to some newer samples. This is a new sample that I recently made called the driving simulator. So what this does is you put in any two addresses, put in a from and a to. Right now I actually think there's a bug where it breaks if you're trying to kind of simulate New York to San Francisco, but you know that's kind of absurd anyway. So from San Francisco to Mountain View, you just click go, and shows you, this is showing off markers and balloons and such and polylines. Actually they're line strings, but and now the cool thing about this is that you can actually press start and it will start driving. Let's increase the speed here. This is a little model of a smart car I got from 3D Warehouse. So it'll drive you along and you can increase the speed and go really, really fast. And as you can see, this is synced up to a map on the side using the Maps API. And that's very easy to do. I think in total the number of lines of code is maybe like a few hundred. And this is actually using some reusable components from the driving simulator. Things like, there's a kind of like a JavaScript file that gives you stuff on how to do some basic math in a 3D space. And there's actually another helpers file that I've made that's included with this as well. So anyway, so you can drive around and you can pause it and do whatever you want. Alright, so some more interesting demos. This one's really cool. This actually was an internal demo that we recently put up. It's called EarthPad, and it lets you kind of, it's like a chat room for the Earth plugin. So you can chat and actually share the same viewport. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in a new window and show you how, let's see, there it is. Show you how they sync up as you change viewports. Wait for it. Wait for it. Come on. Well, this was working just like 5 seconds ago. I guess not. Well, anyway, you can play around with that. And, oh, there we go. Now it's actually moving. Well, anyway, you can play around with it on your home computer, and it actually does sync up pretty well. You can kind of create place marks together, and you can actually do a chat. So this kind of shows things like catching events here and kind of replicating them across a network and then, you know, mimicking them on the other side. So that's EarthPad. Another cool one is for anybody that's into KML at all. There's actually just got put up today. It lets you kind of edit KML interactively and show it in the Earth plugin side by side. So let's see, background color, right? So this shows a balloon with a cool background color. Now I can change it right here. Let's say I want it completely white, or actually let's do cyan. It'll refresh and should be cyan. So this shows again like KML stuff. This actually uses something called parse KML, which gets a string of KML and returns a KML object. You can then traverse the object for all of its features and such. So that's the KML interactive sampler. And here's actually, this isn't exactly a demo, but it's a demo gallery. These are all the demos that we have available right now. This is also recently launched. You can actually select topics, filter by topic, and see whatever you need. The nice thing about this is that there's a lot of basic samples. I'll show you a quick example of a basic sample. And those are kind of really, really simple samples that show you how to do one thing really easily. So show hide terrain, right? You click on show hide terrain. Shows you an instance of Earth, and then shows you the code that you need to run to both hide and show terrain. And it's pretty simple. You just do get layer by ID or enable layer by ID. And you could do this for terrain, buildings, roads. There's probably more that I'm missing, but those are kind of the important ones. Alright, so that's the demo gallery. Now let's go back here. Okay, so those are the kind of the newer demos that have come out. Now let's write some. Actually, no, there's more community demos we'll go through. These are kind of interesting as well. This shows Google Sky and some interesting things you can do with it. So there's the sky. It's probably kind of hard to see with this terrible video signal, but you can navigate the stars. And this is what somebody from Arizona State University did. I think maybe a professor there, I'm not really sure. But you can actually just find stars and get information on them. And there's some navigation here. So there's some pretty interesting things you can do with this, especially for astronomers. And airline routes map. This kind of shows a really nice, where is it? There we are. So you can see airlines in Europe, or actually airports in Europe, and all the other airports they fly to. And it's cool because it shows you in 3D. So you can kind of see the trajectory. I mean, it's not an actual trajectory. That's not what a plane flies like, but it's at least kind of like a nice visualization. All right, so those are some more demos from the community. Okay, so we're done with demos for now. We'll see some more demos later. But so let's talk about Maps on Earth. So let's say you have a Maps API site, kind of like a mashup per se. And you just allow users to see your own data in a Google map. And so we announced the Earth API, and you say, oh, that's great, I want to use that. But you don't want to have to use our entire, you don't have to kind of rewrite all your code to kind of use the new API and to do Google.load Earth1 and et cetera, et cetera. You don't want to have to create a separate instance and things like that. So we've actually made it really, really simple for you to just put in one line of code into your existing map site and show an Earth tab that you can click on, and it just mimics the exact features that are in your maps viewport, and it mimics them right in Earth. So use the Maps API, one line of code, and you're done. So create a map with the Maps API, map type. You add this map type, and then you'll be done. So let's actually start writing that. It should be very, very quick. So HTML head. I'll skip some of the suspense. JS API, and again, you'd have to use the map key there. Script. Let's see. First, let's end that. So again, in the Maps API, you just do div ID equals map, etc. Again, give it a style with say 500 pixels. 500 pixels. Okay, so now we'll load the Maps API instead of the Earth API, because this is what people are already doing. Actually, it's two. And we'll create an onInit function, onload rather. Then in this init function, we'll do the standard thing that you'd normally do, new gmap2. So again, this is stuff that people have been using for a few years already, so this is nothing new. Map. Now let's see, map.setCenter 37, 52, 14. Okay, so let's see what that looks like for now, if we don't do anything. Actually, that does absolutely nothing, so I made a few mistakes. Module map not found. Oh, whoops, maps. Okay, so that's your vanilla maps mashup. Doesn't even do anything, whatever. Add control, gmap type, actually, map type control. This is, oh wait, new gmap type control. Sorry, I'm not a pro at the Maps API like Pamela Fox is. She's good with this stuff. Anyway, so there's the simple map type controls. Now what we're going to do is, with one line of code, we're going to add Earth there. So map.add map type, wait, what was it? Let's see. Yeah, G satellite 3D map. Satellite 3D map. Boom, done. So let's navigate around, click Earth. Actually, it's more impressive when you go from satellite to Earth. So satellite and Earth. So it's the same thing, satellite, Earth mode. So as you can see, the imagery is very similar. So there it is. That's all you pretty much need to do to have an existing map site run with Google Earth side by side. Alright, so that's the code you'd have. Here's some, actually, this is a nice feature to show off as well. Yeah, later. So you can, if you notice that, where is it? There it is. So the navigation controls in map, the Earth navigation controls are very, very similar, and they're in the same place now. So it's, it's a very familiar user experience. Users won't have to kind of learn a new system, and it's available for them with one click of a button. Zoom levels are very close. There's some math going on here that's kind of matching up the zoom. So if you go to set, yeah, it'll zoom right in. So there's some math going on there that's pretty advanced that that kind of makes this really simple and kind of really usable. Okay, so let's move on from there. Wait, that's not it. There it is. All right, so what else is coming? So I just showed you maps in Earth, right? The thing is though that, like, if you, let's say you add some markers in maps. Right now if you click on Earth, those markers will be transported to Earth and it'll look the same, it'll be in the same place, and you'll have the same info windows and everything. However, this kind of functionality is only supported right now for markers and polylines. I believe that polygons you have to manually transfer over, and it's not too hard to do. It's probably like a few lines of code, but you still have to transfer them over manually. So that's one major thing we're working on. We're also working on Google Chrome support. Should be coming out fairly soon. Mac and Linux support is coming as well. We'll talk about that after the video ends. And enterprise support is also planned for. So enterprise customers that currently are stuck with kind of the free terms of service, they'll probably will have, I don't want to say a date, but they'll probably have some sort of support coming up. So here's kind of some important things. If you do plan on going forward with the Earth API and kind of developing your own mashups and whatnot, some of the main things you'll want to do are, first of all, you can get in touch with me internally. You'll also want to check out the developer's guide, which is right here. Some new references that we've put out. Actually, the Earth API reference is brand new. The KML reference has been out for a while, but those kind of go hand in hand. There's also the community support group, which I do spend most of my time in, kind of responding to questions and kind of proposing solutions for some common patterns. There's also the Earth API. It's on groups. Yeah, there's a separate VBS for Earth itself, but this is done through Google Groups. So also the Earth API interactive sampler. What this is, I'm not going to show you now. It's fairly simple. It lets you just type in JavaScript code into a text area, press run, and it runs that code, and it kind of shows you the results in the Earth browser plugin. Another useful, really useful thing for any sort of JavaScript debugging, not only with the Earth API, is Firebug. If you guys haven't used it, then you should. I'm assuming everybody here has heard of it, but just wanted to throw it out there. All right, so that's the talk.